Hey guys, it's 8 Bits of Chips here, and today we'll be talking about the spec analysis of the Raspberry Pi 2 and 3. Now, I will be pointing out in this video that I will not be touching bases on the other ones, such as the Pi Node 0 or Pi 0, or, the Pi 1, mainly because I am yet to acquire these things, and those will be discussed later on. I am currently an owner of the Pi 2 and Pi 3, and yeah, so, we'll be taking a look at what you can do, what features are there, and towards the end of the video, I'll be showing you them physically. Alright, let's get on. So, the first thing here is the Raspberry Pi. What is it? So, the Raspberry Pi is a one-chip credit card-sized computer board, and it ranges from $5 to $35, depending on which one you buy. For example, the Node 0 is priced at $5 from certain sellers, and most Pis, the Pis and 2s, have an average price of about $35. This does not include accessories you might need, such as power cables, cases, monitors, things like that, mouses, things like that. This is made by the Raspberry Pi Foundation. I'll be pointing out that the logo on the top right is not my logo. I just couldn't find a more cleaner one that is the Raspberry Pi Foundation logo. I also do not have a copyright on that, even though it's written there. So, yeah, it is a one-chip credit card-sized computer board, perfect for little things. Another thing will be on this channel, I shall not be discussing Arduino. It is basically the Raspberry Pi counterpart, which I find to be too expensive, too bulky, and limited compared to the Raspberry Pi. So, yeah, and it's not the type of Raspberry Pi you eat, just letting you know. So, here are just pictures of the Raspberry 2 versus the Raspberry Pi 3. Now, if you look, it's basically the same thing. There's no major visual change. The only thing I did find different visually that might majorly affect it is the HDMI port. You can see over here on the Pi 2, there's this orangish square on it, whereas the Pi 3 it does not. I am not sure what that orangish square does. My Pi 2 did not have it for sure, so I'm not sure. Anyway, yeah. So the Pi 2 Model B was released in 2014, as you can see here, whereas the Pi 3 was released in 2015. Excuse me. And if you look here, there's nothing big. Still 40 GPIO pins. Standoffs are there. Everything's good. Ethernet, USBs. The only main difference is the logo is smaller. But yeah, everything's the same, basically. So now this is like the actual things written. So the orange state would have been changed between the 2 to the 3, whereas the blue is the same. So let's go through it slowly. So the first thing that's been changed is a 900 megahertz core processor from RAM with a Cortex A7 CPU. Whereas this one is a quad core 1.2 gigahertz Broadcom BCM 228 CPU. Now, it's not that big a deal in my opinion. You just get a bigger hertz. You can do more things with it. It's more powerful. So not exactly that big. Now, 32-bit CPU to 64-bit CPU, that's an upgrade. Again, these two combined. These two basically are the same thing. This is a 32-bit processor, whereas this is the 64-bit processor. And, as you know, the 64-bit is more powerful. You should have the same number of RAM, 1 gigabytes, which is decent. You have 4 USB ports as normal, 40 GPIO pins. These are extended, they're a bit taller, there's not really that big of a difference. Full HDMI port. Now this is important, reason it's full-size HDMI port is there's a thing called micro HDMI port, which is on the Pi Node 0. So just putting that out there. They both have Ethernet ports. The difference with this one, the biggest difference with the Pi 3, is it had onboard Wi-Fi, onboard Bluetooth, and onboard BLE. Now this is big because before, while the Pi 2 did indeed have Wi-Fi, it did not connect to LAN, and with the Bluetooth you have a whole infinite number of things. For example, I could connect my Mac Magic Keyboard to that, or if I'm doing RetroPie, which is a project I'll get into later, I could connect my Xbox One wireless controllers, things like that. So this was the big thing. It really allowed it. If you wanted to have Bluetooth before, you would actually have to buy a additional dongle, and if you wanted a better Wi-Fi signal than what you had, you also had to buy an additional dongle for the Raspberry Pi 2. Now, if we come here, we do still have a combined 3.5 mm audio jack and composite video. Not that big a deal. It's pretty much a standard. Camera interface, display interface, micro USB slot. The only difference here is this one's spring-loaded, whereas this one's a friction slot. I personally like the spring-loaded one way better than, the friction. It just makes it neater. This one can go up to 1.2 amps for its power source, whereas the Pi 3 can go up to 2.5 amps. The 1.2 amps can be, there's a modification required for that, but yeah. The last thing, which I was actually unsure about, is this VideoCore IV 3D graphics core, and here. So when I searched it up from the official Raspberry Pi website, all of this information here is from that one. The thing is that the oops, the video core here, it's a 3D graphics core, whereas this one was not specified where it's 3D or not. I could not find it. But I'm pretty sure it is a 3D graphics core. I mean, Raspberry Pi Foundation never downgrades; they always upgrade. Or they keep it the same, so there's never a downgrade of it. And if they did, then that should be pretty bad for marketing, in my opinion. Yeah, so these are overall differences. It may look small on paper, but you can do way more things with this Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and 64-bit processor than, compared to the Raspberry Pi 2. I'm speaking from experience here, by the way. Here are the other models of the Raspberry Pi. So we have Model B, A, Compute Model, B+, Model A+, 2 Model B, 0, and 3B. And we have the Pi0W. Now, this chart is not mine. I did not make it. I did not, photograph. Because I do not have it. The only reason I found this image and used it in my video was because, I don't have all of these things. This picture is also slightly outdated. There's a recent thing that's also, not recent, came out in December of 2016, I believe. The Pi0W. The Pi0W also, but the difference between the Pi 0 and 0W was that this included a Wi-Fi antenna and Bluetooth. And yeah, as a separate addition to this video, I'll just be saying, in my high opinion, if you're doing a project, if you're going to get a Raspberry Pi of any kind, get the 3 or the 2. Don't get 0, A, B. Just don't. The thing with the 0 is mainly used for, for example, if you want to create a controller for something, or if you have Sphero, you wanted to control it through that, you could make a controller with the Pi 0. The only problem with the Pi 0 is that there are a whole bunch of adapters needed. I mean, a whole bunch. For example, right, if you look at this thing, SD card, with your OS system logo under your operating system, then you have a micro HDMI, and then you have micro USB, and ribbon cable video. Now, this is used for power. This is used for your system. This is outdated. So, the only things you have available to connect are a HDMI, micro HDMI, and a SD card, a micro USB. Now, this is a pain because you will have to buy a bunch of adapters for a micro HDMI to HDMI if you have a normal monitor. And then you'll have to buy a micro SD USB to USB hub if you want it to connect a keyboard and a mouse, used to a full-fledged thing. So, in my opinion, don't do this unless you've really gotten deep into stuff where you know what you're doing. In my opinion, for beginners, if you're just, trying to learn Raspberry Pi, get some basic coding down, just buy a 2, and even better, buy a 3. In my opinion, the 3 is the best, also, since it's the most recent. Same price, $35, just buy the 3. And, yeah, so, this is 8-bit. In a few minutes, I'll be switching over to my camcorder / very old camera, and I'll be, showing you what I have for my Raspberry Pi 2 and 3. And, yeah, I'll see you momentarily.